Turning a cowshed into home sweet home. Business as usual on Britain's empty homes revisited in 45 minutes on BBC One and BBC One HD.
It's an age-old principle in this country, and one of the things that makes it great, that when we have people in genuine need, we help them out.
It's vital support that improves lives.
At one point I just thought, this is it, I can't do this no more.
However, whenever there's cash on offer, you'll also find people who want to steal it.
Those trying to pinch from the public purse are being pursued.
Clearly she was able to make significant profits.
Welcome to the world of saints and scroungers.
Saints and Scroungers shows the very best and the very worst of the benefits system, including those that set out deliberately to steal from public coffers. It shows those who need help and those who help themselves. Every day across the UK, investigators fight to bring fraudsters to justice, and saints fight to make sure people in need get what they're entitled to.
Coming up on today's show,
a claimant at the heart of a complex web of lies.
She was very evasive and had a cock and bull story about this all being done by other people.
An OAP on the black.
Housing benefit is not designed to pay a mortgage.
And the cunning canine who came to the rescue.
It just means I'm a little bit less disabled than I was before.
money makes the world go round. That's what the song says. This much is true. If you haven't got any money, it certainly comes to a juddering halt. The government is there to help you if you do get into a cash crisis. But then there are some people who seem perfectly happy to help themselves.
This is Fabiola Dantas. On the face of it, an ordinary working single mother employed as a cleaner who turned to Brent Council for help paying her rent in the form of housing benefits. She stated that she had children and wasn't working more than 16 hours a week, which also entitled Dantas to claim for useful tax credits on top of housing benefits. Investigators didn't know it at the time, but she was about to be at the centre of one of their biggest cases. In August 2007, Dantas wasn't even on the radar when a benefit assessor flagged up some discrepancies with benefit claims in Brent. Some of the forms looked suspicious and possibly fake. The suspicious claims were passed on to fraud investigator Simon Lane.
The first claim we had in respect to this case was from a guy called Jose Nunez, who was living in Chamberlain Road in the borough as a single man, allegedly with his daughter. The checks that were initially made on that claim were with HMRC to see if the tax credit letters were genuine, and also with the whole of Brent schools to see where the daughter was being educated. Eventually the checks came back from HMRC saying that the tax credit letters weren't genuine or had been altered, and we couldn't find any trace of the daughter.
Wait a minute. The school had no idea who this guy's daughter was. That's a bit weird. A short while later, a different benefits assessor handed on an unrelated claim to the investigators. This time, it was bank statements that didn't add up.
We then received a claim from Evandro Pereira at another address, Basilgate House. Similar MO, claimant with a child. The assessment officer that received that claim was suspicious because the bank statement was showing the date of February but spelt with a V, F-E-V, a shortened version of February, which would be obviously not the correct English spelling, and sent it to us to have a look at.
So another single dad claiming for a non-existent child. What about these spelling mistakes? The team decided to look further into this Evandro Pereiras. The case was assigned to one of their top fraud investigators. Due to the nature of his job, he's asked to remain anonymous.
One of the things that we'd noticed on that claim was that there was dates, and it was marked FEV, F-E-V, on a Barclays bank statement. We contacted Barclays Bank in order to verify whether or not that is something that they would put on one of their statements to see whether it was an authentic statement or if it was a fraudulent counterfeit document. And Barclays basically did verify that they would only put FEB, F-E-B, on their bank statements.
OK, so that's two single dads bringing up children in the borough, both with questionable paperwork. A short time later, there was yet another case with striking similarities.
We then received a claim in the name of Daniel Alexandre at an address close to the other two addresses. Again, it carried the FEV date on the bank statement. We made some inquiries with the landlord of that property, who said Alexandre wasn't, as far as they were concerned, a tenant.
Not a tenant. Similar spelling mistakes. What could these links between unassociated applicants mean? There were questions to be asked, but meanwhile claims were still flowing into the office.
And around about the same time we received a further claim from a guy called Cesar Texiera. He's at the same address as Alexandre, same MO, low earnings, children involved, can't trace the children to schools.
Fraudulent claims, addresses appearing again and again but with different occupants. Benefit claims for children that couldn't be tracked down. Something was up and the team knew it, but for the time being, these were all being treated as separate, unrelated cases by different investigators.
These cases shared addresses and spelling mistakes, and what do you know? Bank statements included in Alexandra's paperwork contained data relating to Pereira, linking the two separate claimants.
It could well have been that the same statements were used on the other claims, where they've just changed the name and the address on the statements. The account information and the details were held within there. Obviously can't see who they relate to, but they would have been the same ones.
Further investigation started to raise more suspicions. Requests for extra information resulted in inconsistent employer and landlord details.
We'd asked further information, things like wage slips or contracts of employment, at which point Alexandra decided to withdraw her claim to benefit.
With all the inconsistencies, it was time to pay someone a visit.
With the Pereira claim, we actually went round to the property, knocked on the door looking for him and was told he wasn't about. We tried to invite him in for an interview and we got a call to say that he was unavailable. We tried to rearrange it, and then shortly after we got a letter in to say he's going back to Brazil and obviously can't make any more appointments.
Like a red rag to a bull to an investigator, often the very act of withdrawing or cancelling a claim is a sign of potential guilt.
Basically what we thought then was they were willing to burn a claim, as we called it, to stop the claim, throw it away and start with a new claim to avoid getting caught. We got together, the officers involved, and we realised there were similarities within all the different investigations that we were looking at. They were using addresses, contact numbers and other information. A landlord's telephone number on one claim would be the employer's telephone number on another claim. Previous address on one claim would be where they're working on a different claim. So at that stage we started looking at the identities on the claims. We noted that the Nunez and the Teixeira claims had the same photograph on different passports.
While the investigators still weren't exactly sure who was responsible, it looked like the team had unearthed a large-scale, highly organised benefit fraud relying on multiple addresses, multiple identities and fake paperwork. Paperwork that was allowing them to make claims. Then, yet another suspicious application was passed on to them, this time from a Miss Fabiola Dantas. Remember her? She's our hard-working mother claiming for housing benefit and tax credits. It seemed that Dantas was also claiming for children who weren't known to the local schools either. It sound familiar? Well, just look a little closer.
She was claiming for 3 children. When we looked historically, those children had changed over the years. There was a total of 12 different children registered to her claim. Never all in one go.
12 children, wow. I mean, I can't imagine anyone with all those children would ever have time to con the council, unless she was some kind of super mum.
Only ever 2 to 4 children registered at any one time. As the children got older, to a school year where a benefit assessor had contacted them to ask for some verifications of that child, something would happen. They'd move abroad, they'd move to family members.
Dantas even went as far as to declare that one child had died.
And we were given a death certificate to that. And obviously, later, further children would be added to the claim again. But there wasn't 12 children on there at one time to raise that suspicion. It's only when you look into the archives of the previous details that went obviously back a number of years that this all came to light.
This long-term deception was damning enough, but once Dantas was in the frame, her name began to appear everywhere, linked to the properties and individuals already under investigation, which had now been grouped under the codename Operation Scarlet. When they started to knock on doors, the plot thickened.
Fabiola Dantas was also a claimant of ours, so she was not only a claimant, but she was being identified as a possible landlord by some of the tenants.
How could a mother claiming for benefits be a landlord as well? It didn't add up.
We obtained all of the claim forms and the relevant documents that have been submitted. We started to suspect that some people were using multiple identities, particularly the Nunes claim, where we felt that the picture on the passport was similar to a Teixeira claim.
The paper trail suggested that Dantas was not only claiming tax credits illegally, but might also be using fake passports and identities under the names of Teixeira, Nunes and Pereira to make further bogus benefit claims.
Fabiola Dantas turned up as a guarantor for Nunes, and she also turned up as a council taxpayer at Blackheath House, neither of which she was ostensibly associated with.
The web was getting more complex. On top of everything else, investigators were beginning to suspect that Dantas was renting houses in false names, claiming benefits at those properties, as well as taking rent from tenants.
And a number of these properties, about 10 or 11 properties in total involved, and lots of the properties were used as either employer addresses or landlord addresses for other claims, and then those properties themselves would be other employer addresses, and the whole thing was linked. So you'd get a circular link, if you like, with various phone numbers associated with properties linked to other properties, all within this group of 10 or 11 properties.
The investigators were realising Dantas was at the centre of what's known as carousel fraud. She was creating multiple fake identities and recycling their details across different claims in a circular effect. Dantas was defrauding the council of hundreds of thousands of pounds. The pressure was on to find her and bring a stop to a misleading merry-go-round of criminality. Operation Scarlet was given the green light. Would they be able to bring Dantas to justice?
I remember the morning of the searches, I was feeling very nervous, hoping that all the evidence I got was obviously accurate on that, thinking, I don't want this to go wrong.
OK, farewell to fraudsters and hello to people we call saints. That's those in society who help others who are in genuine need but are sometimes too proud or don't know how to claim what's rightfully theirs. Imagine a world where all your everyday needs require somebody else to help you. Simple things like emptying the washing machine, opening a door, or picking up a pencil. All the things that, in fact, able-bodied people take for granted without a second thought. And that's exactly what life's like for 33-year-old Lorna Marsh.
I have cerebral palsy, quadriplegia. The cerebral palsy means that I'm a wheelchair user, and the quadriplegia bit means that it affects all four limbs, and it basically means that the messages don't get from my head to where I want them to go. So that's why I've got some movement and I can do some things and not others.
Lorna's a confident and outgoing woman, but the tough reality is that she requires 24-hour care to see her through each day.
I get annoyed with my situation only when I have to think about the logistics of who's getting me up in the morning or who's putting me to bed at night or who's going to help me tidy my house. That's when I get frustrated. But on a day-to-day basis, then you don't think about it because there's more to me than being in a wheelchair.
Lorna keeps herself very busy. She's not only working with autistic children and adults as a part-time teacher. On top of that, she's got a successful career working for an organisation called Surrey Independent Living Council. It's a job that draws on all her experience and insight as a disabled person. I've come to meet her to find out a bit more. The role that you have helping people, how does that work? What do you help them to do?
Basically, I support people with their direct payments. Direct payments is a funding that's awarded by government to help other people in various situations live more independently. So it's about helping them to reach the independence level that they want to get to.
The direct payment scheme allows people with disabilities to take control of the way their benefit money can be spent. For example, it enables them to employ personal assistants of their own choosing and schedule visits at times which suit them.
Quite a lot of the time, people maybe have spent years and years and years not knowing what they're capable of. And then I come along and say, but hang on a minute, what would you do if you weren't in your situation? How would you like to picture your life?
So it's like opening the door to the idea that you're allowed to have a life.
You're allowed to be an individual and you're allowed to make your own choices. Before direct payments came about, the choice was whatever you were given. So you had to get up when they had an available slot and you couldn't pick who was going to get you up. It was whoever came through the door. So you still had to, be very private with them, if you like, and you barely knew them. And now with direct payments, you can say, actually, I really like this person. I've got time to get to know them, and then they can do my personal care.
Lorna is clearly passionate about her job and helping others, and she's well liked and respected at work.
Lorna's, I think, really skilled at her job. She hates red tape, so if she's having to deal with someone who's quite a bureaucrat, she'll warm them up first, get them on side, and then give them her honest opinion as to why things need to change. I think she'd make a brilliant MP, actually.
What is it that qualifies you, do you think, to be able to help people in this way?
I've been on direct payments myself about 18 years or so, and obviously from a personal point of view, I've seen the massive difference. But I also saw the fight that my parents had to find out the information. And I thought, well, I don't want other people to go through that. And so I just saw it as a good opportunity to share my experiences with them and learn some more stuff for myself along the way.
Lorna may have always been reliant on the care of others, but when she was a kid, her mum and dad strove to give her the best start in life. And perhaps the loving family home insulated her from many of the difficulties presented by her disability.
When I was a child, I didn't really realise, if you like, that I was actually any different to my sisters because my parents fed it to them. They just made everything flow and seem a lot more straightforward than perhaps it was. And it wasn't until people started playing games in the playground at school when I realised I couldn't do certain things.
But her can-do attitude has stayed with her and has meant that as she's grown up, confidence has never been an issue for Lorna.
From as far as I can remember, I've always had different people in my life that have inspired me, who have always been absolutely determined if there's something I want to do, then there's no reason why I shouldn't do it. And that's what drives me, achieve as much as I want to achieve. And I think that if I'm being completely honest, if I wasn't disabled, then I wouldn't have the drive I've got because I want to prove people wrong all the time.
She's no shrinking violet, and true to her belief in proving people wrong, she went to university to study dance.
I did a dance degree at Coventry University and at LIPA, but I do feel that I had to prove myself. Even from my classmates on the first day was kind of, why is she here?
People might look at you, here you are in your wheelchair, and say you are the least qualified person they can think of to be engaging in the act of dance. How does it work?
It works by me having the creative ideas in my head and having the opportunity to get other people who are able-bodied or more able than myself to produce them in front of me.
Lorna had a great time at university, but it was there that she began to realise just how hard life was going to be for her as an independent woman out in the big wide world.
That point where you leave your family home, describe that to me.
Really, really, really difficult. Like, really shocking. You don't realise how much your parents and relatives do. I was having to sort out rotas, find people, and it was like, okay, I'm really disabled, I thought, I only need a few bits and pieces, and yes, it was a little naive, but that's how smoothly things were running when I was a kid.
But there was a period there where you had to toughen up.
Yeah, big time, yeah. because I couldn't go, Mum, Dad, I need a hand, because they were saying, we're not helping you now, you've moved out, you know. And it was a good thing, they did me a favour, but obviously they're there if I need them. But they said, you've got to try and do this on your own.
I get the feeling just from, meeting this morning, you're not the sort of person that likes to feel like a burden.
I hate it. I hate it to be all about the care. Can't stand it, because there's more to me than just needing support and being disabled. I'm an individual with my own interests, and when it becomes all about the care, you don't necessarily feel like you are. There's more to life than being disabled.
It's this desire not to be a burden and a craving for independence that was going to change Lorna's life forever.
I was at a disability event. We were there originally to look for a wheelchair. My grandma was getting a little bit bored with the situation and came across the stand and then dragged me towards it, telling me that I'd got to see this and never mind about the wheelchair because this was much more interesting. And as it turned out, she was right.
But will her new discovery be a creature comfort or just a beast who's a burden?
Good boy! Good boy! Good lad.
At last count, 5.9 million UK residents of working age were claiming benefits, whether it's because of their disability, to bridge the gap while they're out of work, or to top up their income to make a living wage. Now, for the majority, the welfare system provides a crucial safety net that they can rely upon in their hour of need.
But for all the innocent benefit claimants out there, there'll always be one or two pocketing money which isn't rightfully theirs. Whether they've forgotten to declare a change in their circumstances or deliberately misled the authorities, over £1 billion a year is lost to benefit fraud. Thankfully, teams of investigators all over the country are trawling data on computers, studying claim forms, or are out on the streets, determined to catch the cheats red-handed. Today's cheat is the property portfolio pensioner. Being an old age pensioner in today's economic climate can be tough. Prices are rising all the time on everything from fuel bills to food, so it's not surprising that some of our OAPs are feeling the financial pinch.
And that's where a bit of government help can really come into its own, helping to stretch pensioner pounds and pennies just a little bit further. Coral Lindsell, 70 years old, is a prime example.
She came to the council in 1997 and asked for assistance with her rent payments in the form of housing benefit. Coral Lindsell then informed us that she was moving to a new address at Park Road. Her rent was going to be increasing to £95 a week. Because of her rent increasing, she had to ask for more help.
This is exactly what benefits are for, to help out when you need it. Like in Lindsell's case, to help pay the rent. For the council, everything looked perfectly normal.
When Coral Lindsell informed us that her rent was increasing to £95 a week, she provided a letter from her landlord to confirm that. We therefore had no reason to suspect that, the information was incorrect.
It sounds pretty straightforward.
But as it turns out, Lindsell was far from being your everyday pensioner.
In September 2010, Coral Lindsell wrote to our council tax department to inform them that her landlord would be staying at the property and living there for a period of time due to ill health. That arose suspicions. Our council tax department then made some inquiries and completed a land registry for the property. It declared that, in fact, Coral Lindsell, not being a tenant, was in fact a joint owner of the address with the person that she'd named as landlord.
So was Lindsell a pensioner plundering the public purse, saying she was a rent payer when she actually part-owned the property with someone who wasn't her landlord but part-owner as well. Wanting to get to the bottom of it all, the investigation got underway at Elmbridge Council with more land registry checks.
In addition to finding out that she owned the property that she was claiming housing benefit for, we went on to find out that she owned a property in Devon jointly. In fact, the property was mortgage-free and they had been renting it out shortly following buying it in 2006. The rental that they were receiving for that property was £565 per month. so therefore the rental that they were receiving for the address was going straight to their pocket.
Hold on a minute. This isn't sounding good. No, and the fraud investigators were thinking the same thing. The scheme was clear. Let me explain. Coral Lindsell wasn't a penny-pinching pensioner struggling with the rent as she'd portrayed. She was actually a pensioner with a property portfolio. Now try saying that 10 times.
When we had gathered sufficient evidence, we then asked for an interview under caution. During that interview, Coral Lindsell confirmed that she had made her claim for benefit. She confirmed that she'd completed all of the documents in relation to her claim. She knew, had she not have made her claim for benefit, she would not have been able to afford her side of the mortgage. She wasn't entitled to housing benefit because she had no rent to pay effectively. She had a mortgage instead, and housing benefit is not designed to pay a mortgage.
I couldn't agree more. So how much had the piratical pensioner pocketed and plundered?
So her claim for housing benefit was cancelled back. That created quite a substantial overpayment, around £16,000. Because of the property that she owned in Devon, because of the capital value of the property, she wasn't entitled to pension credit, and her claim for pension credit was cancelled as well, again creating a very large overpayment, around £16,000. Coral Lindsell was overpaid in total around about £33,000.
In the summer of 2012, Coral Lindsell was charged with making dishonest statements about her financial situation to both Elmbridge Borough Council and the Department for Work and Pensions. She held her hands up and pleaded guilty in court and received 26 weeks imprisonment, suspended for 2 years, 120 hours community service. But here's the sting. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act, she's been ordered to pay back over £59,000 in compensation to cover not only what she received in claims, but penalty fines on top. Just goes to show, being older doesn't necessarily make you wiser.
Elmbridge Borough Council has a duty to protect the public purse. We take benefit fraud very seriously, and if we find someone that has been committing benefit fraud, this could lead to possible court action and a criminal record.
So the penalised pensioner had to cough up her ill-gotten gains, which only goes to show, if you're going to try and defraud the housing benefit people, you'd better work out how you're going to live with yourself, if you see what I mean.
Hallelujah! It's time to leave the devious world of the Scrounger and return to those who are genuinely in need. Living life with cerebral palsy not only means that Lorna Marsh requires a wheelchair, but she needs substantial help on a daily basis. The question was, how could Lorna be more independent given her care needs? The solution came when least expected, and when it did, Lorna was quick to take up the lead.
I was actually at a wheelchair exhibition, and then I saw he had a dog there, and I fell in love with the dog, and I fell in love with the whole concept.
The big idea was that of canine partners, which, as the name suggests, partners a client with a disability with a trained dog that can do many useful everyday tasks.
Anyone who has a mobility problem, disability of any sort where it's impacting their life in some way, could really benefit from a canine partner. They don't need to necessarily be in a wheelchair, but they might need a dog for balance if they've got balance issues when they're walking, or it could be right down to somebody who is paralysed from the neck down.
And I was also obsessed with the idea of getting a dog from that point on, but I almost thought I was too disabled for it to be a help. But then obviously, as I found out more and more, I realised how wrong I was, and then realised that it could make a massive difference to my situation, even if it was psychologically.
Lorna's family took some convincing that she could take on the care of an animal as well as herself, but with their blessing, she signed up. Yes, it's time to meet Eli, Lorna's best friend and helper. He's a live-in personal assistant who's only too happy to help. Lorna still needs a human personal assistant, but Eli is great at giving Lorna a much greater sense of independence.
Talk me through the things that he can help you out with. on a daily basis?
I always say it's easier to talk about the things he can't do rather than the things he can, because the things he can't is a lot less. But he does 306 or so different things for me. They range from opening and closing the door. Good lad! Good lad! Yay, well done! Opening and closing the bin, to helping me take my coat off. Good boy. The flushing the toilet, turning the lights on and off. You know, the list is non-stop. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy, like good boy. More. Over your head. Good boy. Good lad, good boy. Put it on the hook. Good lad. Good boy. And that will keep growing, and that's what's amazing.
One of the most impressive things that she told me about was when you or I want to turn ourselves over in the night, automatically. Lorna can't do that, so she taught Eli to turn her over in bed at night so that her sleep is continued and she has a good quality rest. And I hadn't even thought that a dog could be trained to do something like that. He is there to do a job for her, but he does it with unconditional love, and the two of them are completely inseparable now.
The range of tasks that Eli is able to perform is amazing. But these skills don't happen overnight. It takes hours of dedicated and specialised training before the dogs get to go home with their new owners.
It takes about 2 years for the dogs to complete their whole of their training, so they are in with puppy parents up until sort of the first 14 to 18 months of their lives, where they have weekly puppy classes, and then they come into us where we have them for 15 weeks in advanced training. So usually by the time the dog's going out, they're usually about 2 years old. There's sort of many benefits to a dog. Primarily, our partners feel that the dogs provide them with independence, as a lot of our partners rely on care throughout their daily life, assist them with very simple tasks that we might find easy, such as dropping your phone, picking that up. Whereas having a dog means that they don't have to rely upon someone to do that. The dog are so willing and keen to do it anyway. It's all just a game for them, so they love doing it, and it just means they have one less person to ask for help.
Eli, my lad.
Once the all-important bond between Lorna and Eli was established, the impact on her life was instant and dramatic.
And I remember when I was doing the residential course, which you do just before you bring the dog home, I needed to get out the flat, and my PA that was with me at the time said I asked her to open the door for me, because that's what I usually always did. So, you know, I didn't think anything of it. And she turned around and she said, "Why are you asking me? You can get Eli to do it now." That was the first time I got him to open the door, and I let myself out. I got him to open the door, and then I also got him to close the door behind me. And bearing in mind I'm now in my 30s, that this was the first time I'd opened and closed the door independently in my entire life, ever. So it was that moment when I realised, okay, even if it's the tiny little things, it's actually massive.
I mean, it sounds to me like you've got two things here. You've got really practical help.
Yeah.
But you've also got, again, something which just is another asset to your life, another facet to your life, which makes it a life, not an existence.
He enhances my life to a level that I never thought he would. It just makes you a level of independence that you'd never thought you'd reach. He makes my hands work better. He makes me feel safer. He makes me feel like I can roll over in bed because he helps me at night time. Little things like that, but it's not little things, it's massive.
It's not a professional relationship you've got here.
No, he's my best friend. It's one of the best decisions I ever made. Good Christ, good stop. But yeah, no, he's phenomenal, and I just wish that everybody had the opportunity to experience it. Because you can't, look at me, I'm really struggling. I never struggle for words, and I'm really struggling to put it into words because it's just great. It just means I'm a little bit less disabled than I was before.
Between 2007 and 2009, a series of fraudulent applications for child tax credits and assorted fake documents set alarm bells ringing for Brent Council fraud investigators. Fabiola Dantas' name kept on cropping up, linking her to an organised scam to defraud the council of hundreds of thousands of pounds.
There was sort of what we'd call a carousel effect where they were pushing the details round onto the next claim, and we'd linked the fact that they were all using European identities. They were all claiming to work 16 hours, which is the minimum amount of hours you can work to get tax credits at that time, which meant they could get their top-up housing benefit at a maximum rate. The fact they had children, they could get 3-4 bedroom houses to house those children. Then we'd realise that claims were linked because of the contact details, because of the use of various documentation within each of the claims, different names appearing, the children's names being very similar, and literally the same thing occurring on all of these benefit claims.
The investigators believed that Dantas was at the centre of all this carousel fraud. Now they just had to prove it.
We contacted the banks and building societies involved, and they provided us with CCTV footage from ATMs. We wasn't sure, but we did see that there was a gentleman and a lady that were more often drawing money from the various bank accounts. That's when we believed it was people creating fraudulent identities to obtain benefit claims and abuse the system.
The investigators were now hot on Dantas' trail and were trying to prove she was pocketing the money. In the meantime, investigators were able to join up all the confusing elements to get their first clear view of how the scam worked.
We believe all the properties were private landlord-owned properties rented out through directly or via estate agencies to Dantas or her associates. We were aware that the rent was paid. Often the benefits was there to pay the rent. That wasn't where she was getting necessarily the profit of her scam. Profit came from the fact that there wasn't children and she had many spare rooms that were then rented out. And if you're not actually paying the rent, housing benefit is, any profit you get goes straight to yourself.
So that's what it's all about. Now that Dantas' fraud was out in the open, the investigators had to move quickly to shut her down.
We've got no power of arrest as a local authority, and we've got no powers to search, so we need the assistance of the police. So in around 2011, we approached our colleagues at Wembley Police to see if they'd assist us with an arrest and search.
The whole investigation had been conducted by Brent Council, and they'd spent quite a few months gathering the evidence with regards to the fraud. So in effect it was their own investigation. They needed police assistance with regards to executing warrants, taking people into custody.
Police arranged for search warrants on 5 different properties to be conducted simultaneously.
Now that the police were on board, the team got ready for a raid on the suspect properties. After so much time tracking down the criminals, they were understandably tense.
In the morning at the briefing, we could see 30 police officers, 15 UK border agency officers for any Brazilian overstayers, and also 8 of my colleagues that were involved in these searches on that, thinking, I don't want this to go wrong. I hope my evidence is secure. I remember them moving from the briefing to sites of the searches and how professional and organised the police were in getting their search teams into place on a number of these properties.
As the police went in, it wasn't long before they realised they'd struck gold.
With the arrests that were made, some were for immigration offences that were dealt with by the UK Border Agency. Then with regards to criminal arrests, we arrested one of the main subjects, which was Fabiola Dantas.
Bingo. The team were in luck, and the police had nabbed their chief suspect.
When the police and investigators entered the properties, they found Fabiola Dantas quite quickly. She was at one of the properties that there was a claim to benefit at, just not the claim address that she was claiming to live at for benefit purposes. She was using one of the other addresses. The address she was claiming at was only 2 doors away. Also in her property, there were no children, but there were other people that were paying her rent.
Not only had the police caught Dantas red-handed, they also bagged evidence of her activities, including more damning paperwork that proved she was the key player all along.
She had a small Mercedes vehicle out the front, left the vehicle, and her house was searched.
We found a number of items which were useful in evidence, including bank cards with PIN numbers written on the back in the names of some of the other tenants, blank tenancy agreements and blank wage slips.
She did have the latest gadgets, iPhones, computers, etc. Not huge significant amounts of luxury items within the house. We found on these many pictures, we could clearly see that she'd been to Amsterdam, Paris, Egypt, to a football game, Benfica, which is in Portugal. The money obviously was going into this luxury lifestyle of travelling around Europe. Her mobile phone was looked at as well, and we found, having translated it at a later stage, she said that she was sending a lot of money back home to Brazil to family that she had there.
With Dantas finally under arrest, the fraud team felt like they were getting close to putting a stop to this scam. And from their chief suspect, they wanted answers.
But even under questioning, it seemed that Dantas wasn't prepared to go quietly.
One of my officers interviewed her under caution. At that interview, she was quite evasive. She couldn't provide any proper explanation as to what the basis of the claims were, where these children were. She initially said that she was an informant of ours and she'd given us anonymous information about these claims. She was very evasive, not particularly helpful, and had a cock and bull story about this all being done by other people.
It seemed that after a lifetime of deceit, Dantas couldn't help but lay the lies on even thicker. She was prepared to tell anything apart from the truth.
While she was on remand, she requested a second interview with us, which was quite unusual, and we ended up interviewing her in one of the cells at court. She then offered an explanation that her children were being held hostage in Brazil and she was being forced to perpetuate this fraud. She'd never started it, she was just perpetuating a fraud that had been set up by someone else. She was doing so under duress.
With the amount of evidence they had, clearly these last-ditch attempts to cover up her guilt weren't going to fool anybody. In the end, Dantas pleaded guilty to all charges and was finally sent down for 27 months in prison. But the big question has to be, how much did her 12-year criminal campaign cost the public purse before a stint in jail finally put a stop to it? A whopping, estimated £192,000.
We're always pleased to see a custodial sentence in these cases where there's a significant amount of money taken from the public purse, nearly £200,000. We're still pursuing a confiscation hearing. There will be one under the Proceeds of Crime Act where we will be trying to identify any assets that are held on Miss Dantas and trying to identify the criminal benefit that she's gained as a result of the monies that she's stolen from us, and we will be attempting to recover funds where possible.
Eventually, like all bad things, it came to an end, and Dantas's carousel fraud finally stopped turning, as did her world, when the judge sent her to jail. You can't claim benefits from there.
Jack's taking matters into his own hands when Phil makes Sharon an offer she can't refuse. EastEnders tonight at 8. Britain's Empty Homes Revisited is next on BBC One.